The Electoral College votes today. We've got reports from Albany and Trenton, and also our political panel here to debate whether it's the best system to actually choose a president. And we caught up with both Bill Clinton and Andrew Cuomo today and got their thoughts on the vote and the controversial election. Also in Europe, a truck plowing into a crowd in Germany, killing at least 9 people on the very same day the Russian ambassador to Turkey is assassinated in cold blood in Ankara. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French here. We'll get to those stories coming out of Turkey as well as Germany shortly. But we begin stateside, where the Electoral College meeting across the country today to make the presidential election vote official. Here is a bit of dissension, but it went off without a hitch. From unlikely candidate to unstoppable president-elect, Donald Trump set to officially become the 45th president of the United States. Protesters shouting "Shame on you" as Electoral College members cast their votes in Pennsylvania, where Trump beat Hillary Clinton by less than 1%.
20 votes for Donald J. Trump.
Realizing the likelihood of electors changing their votes were about that slim.
I don't know if there's a realistic chance, but I think this is our last chance.
State by state, electors casting their ballots, including Bill Clinton in New York. In Minnesota, one elector going rogue, replaced after refusing to cast his vote for Hillary Clinton. Similarly, in Maine, one elector trying to vote for Bernie Sanders going against state law. That ballot was ruled out of order, and in the end, he voted for Clinton. And in Wisconsin, the allegations of Russians hacking the election to help Trump persisted.
No president.
In the end, it's the electors with the final word.
Thank you, tellers, for tallying the votes. The votes are 10 votes, Donald J. Trump.
And we can tell you tonight that the votes have been counted, and Texas has put Donald Trump over the top. So anyone with conspiracy theories, put them to rest. He will be the next president of the United States, period. Now, our Dominic Carter, he caught up with Bill Clinton right after he voted for his wife, who, of course, won the state of New York but fell short nationally.
Mr. President, can you please tell me, how do you feel today? Is it bittersweet for you?
Yeah, but I've never cast a vote I was prouder of. You know, I watched her work for 2 years. I watched her battle through that bogus email deal, be vindicated at the end when Secretary Powell came out. She fought through that. She fought through everything. And she prevailed against it all. But, you know, then at the end we had the Russians and the FBI deal, which she couldn't prevail against that. But she did everything else and still won by 2.8 million votes.
In addition, Governor Cuomo also voted today, and Dom spoke with him as well.
Governor Cuomo, is today somewhat bittersweet for you?
Well, let me put it this way. This is discharging an important constitutional duty. The Electoral College is how we select presidents. There are other mechanisms. There's the national popular vote. I happen to personally support the national popular vote. But it is, there was a bittersweetness, you could say. All the electors at this college convening elected Hillary Clinton, and obviously she's not going to be the next president of the United States, so that's sad. Having President Bill Clinton in the room was also bittersweet. I respect him tremendously for coming up. It couldn't be easy for him to go through this proceeding, to see the Electoral College elect his wife, but to know that there's a different outcome for the nation. He was very gracious. He was very kind. He was in good spirits. And if he had to go through this anywhere, I'm glad he went through it in New York. I have a long personal relationship with him, and I truly enjoy our time together.
Are you the nominee 4 years from now, Governor?
I'm running for governor. You want to get rid of me as governor, Dominic? You don't like the job I'm doing?
And down in Trenton, 501's Raven Santana, she was there as New Jersey electors cast their vote.
For President Hillary Rodham Clinton and Vice President Timothy Michael Cain, each elector received 2,148,270 votes. These are your electors.
Today, New Jersey electors voted for Senator Hillary Clinton and Vice President Tim Kaine.
All 14 ballots were cast for Hillary Clinton for President of the United States.
The announcement came after a brief history lesson by Lieutenant Governor Kim Guadagno about how the electoral vote works to a room full of advocates, lawmakers, and students from a local high school.
Today, our College of Electors gathered for the 58th time in New Jersey's history to formally cast ballots for the President and Vice President of the United States.
So it was a bittersweet moment, as you can see, for both Bill Clinton and Andrew Cuomo, but Donald Trump, not so much. Now, I want to show you if there's been anything consistent over this campaign is the inconsistencies of positions of the Donald. But here's what he had to say about the Electoral College just over this weekend.
I never appreciated it until now, how genius it was, what they had in mind.
Well, that was then and this is now. That a bit different than what he had to say about the Electoral College, easy for me to say, in the past. Here are some of the, of course, tweets that Trump has put out on it. This election, a total sham and a travesty. We're not a democracy. The Electoral College is a disaster for democracy. Okay, and with that, let me bring in our panel. Former Democratic New Jersey Congressman Steve Rothman, Jeannie Zaino, professor of political science at Iona College, also senior advisor at the consulting firm Applied Economics, and Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent. First, what Bill Clinton said, and then whether or not we have the best process or a flawed one in terms of the electoral process. Bill Clinton today said, and John Podesta over the weekend said that it wasn't necessarily, at least Podesta, not a free and fair election given the hacking. Bill Clinton obviously made it clear that what Comey did in the week before the election and then the hacking that we obviously now know was directed by somebody out of Russia, if not all the way to the Kremlin, that also a bridge too far for her to overcome. Sour grapes, or do they have a point?
I think to some degree sour grapes. I objected to what Director Comey did. We don't know yet whether the Russian hacking of the Democratic National Committee and John Podesta's emails affected the election, but Hillary Clinton lost.
We can never know that, right?
But Secretary Clinton lost 30 states. She only won 20. She did win the popular vote by 2.8 million. I would say, however, get rid of the Electoral College.
Well, I want to get that in a second, but let me play devil's advocate. She lost Pennsylvania by less than 1 percentage point. We'll never know, did 1% of the electorate change their mind in the week before the election, given Comey's emails, given the hacks that certainly dominated the news cycles. And I remember there were certain days where the story changed from Trump being on the ropes to what Podesta said or so Wasserman Schultz said or whatever else. And I know in 20 House races, Republicans used it against Democrats. So because we'll never know how much of an impact they really had, both of those elements, right?
Well, I'm not really sure that we'll never know. First of all, President Obama said he's going to release a report before the end of the year about what happened, and then hopefully there'll be a Senate investigation. But we don't know
how much you mean in terms of changing minds.
But the other point, which everybody was worried about, including President Obama, was whether anybody hacked into the voting booths and the electoral process itself. And there's no evidence of that now.
Okay. Jeannie, I'm curious. Certainly, you can look and say, hey, more of these states are red than blue. I understand the logic behind the Electoral College, that in part, flyover states don't get flown over. People are going to actually see them and campaign in them and the rest. But if you win by 2.5 or 3 million more votes in the popular vote, shouldn't that be the final number that matters, not where they happen to live?
Yeah, I mean, the Electoral College makes absolutely no sense. It made no sense at the time of the founding, and it makes no sense now. One standard of a fair and democratic election is that there is one man, one vote, and we all have equal representation. And the Electoral College ensures that that is not the case. And the arguments for the Electoral College tend to suggest that if we got rid of it, you could win the election by going from New York to Chicago to LA and ignoring the middle part of the country. And that's simply mathematically not the case. It is not true. There are not enough votes in the first 100 biggest cities in this country to give you the election. So that argument makes no sense. The real reason we had it, it was part and parcel of the 3/5 compromise. It was part and parcel of the agreement between the North and the South, the small and the large states, and it holds no water today. We should get rid of it. It's going to be very difficult to do that. And so we probably won't do that. And you're probably going to have to go with some plan like the League of Women Voters has been supporting for a long time, where states agree to have their electors follow the popular vote. But it absolutely, in terms of a fair democratic electoral process, has never made any sense. Apart from 2016, 2000, 1876, 1888, 1824. Regardless of who you wanted to win, it's not a fair way to elect a president. It's not a fair way to elect anybody.
Except from a functionality standpoint, it's better than any other system that we could pick right now. I mean, if you wound up just doing purely national popular vote, we'd still be counting votes in a recount from Election Day, trying to figure out, how do you recount 100 million votes accurately?
Except, Andrew, no, wait, you're right. And certainly you go back to Bush v. Gore, we'd still be counting. But with a margin now of 3 million votes, roughly 2.5 to 3 million that separate her in her lead in the popular vote, you can still be counting, but it wouldn't change the outcome to this point, and that's more the norm than the exception.
But if you did the recount, you would have to recount all 50 states plus the District of Columbia, and you'd still be going through the process right now. And do you really think if the election was reversed, Donald Trump wouldn't be calling for a recount of those votes right now? Because you never know where they are. But let's also, voting is a state responsibility, and running elections is a state responsibility. You would have to go back, I think, change the Constitution, and certainly usurp that state power. And oh, by the way, those red states aren't about to sign off on anything like that, or even on the compact for the popular vote. So it's probably not going to change at any point in the near future.
It probably won't, but does it make any sense that if you live in Wyoming, your vote is worth 10 times more than a voter in California? It makes absolutely no sense. In New York, we are 5 votes short of other states. In California, 10, Texas, 8.
But you can make that same argument about representation in the Senate. It's, why is a New York voter's vote in the Senate less effective than in Wyoming?
But we have a bicameral legislature. The president is the person we all elect, and we should get rid of the Electoral College. But I agree with you, we probably won't. It's very, very difficult to amend, so you've got to go with the compact or another plan that gets you around amendment.
Well, there's one other way to do it. Obviously, my reading of history is that one of the major reasons for the Senate to have 2 seats per state, those with 500,000 folks and those with 34 million only get 2 seats each, was to bring the smaller colonies into the Union and to keep them there and give us a sense of cohesion as a country, and also to have an electoral college. I think it's time, as you would say as well, Professor Genie, to get rid of the Electoral College for lots of reasons. And yes, it may be difficult, Andrew, to get this thing through the state legislatures to amend the Constitution to get rid of the Electoral College, but I wouldn't put it past the U.S. Supreme Court sometime in the future to say this is unconstitutional. Remember, we had slavery enshrined in our U.S. Constitution, and over the course of our history, the U.S. Supreme Court said, we're going to allow an amendment.
I love this academic conversation, but in my lifetime, with the makeup most likely of what will be with 2 more Republican seats, I don't think that will happen.
But it's important, though, to say what's right and what's wrong, and then work towards getting what's right to happen in real life. So in the school board cases where they said separate was unequal, Supreme Court said separate is unequal, and then they interpreted the Constitution a few years later saying, no, separate is unequal.
Begging your pardon, though, the setup for the Electoral College is in the Constitution. The Supreme Court cannot find something in the Constitution unconstitutional. You have to change the Constitution.
Well, I respectfully disagree. A Supreme Court can find a way under another provision of the Constitution to render something unconstitutional.
The Constitution cannot be unconstitutional, by definition.
Well, it can be changed, it can be altered by the Supreme Court.
Yes.
The most likely way to do this is the compact of the states, or most states to do what Maine and Nebraska have done, which is go to a proportional system. The problem here is that 48 states have a winner-take-all system.
What Jeannie's talking about is in Maine and Nebraska, if you have 3 electoral votes, depending on in the North, if the North votes one way, whoever gets the most votes will get that electoral vote. And let's say the southern part of the state has 2 electoral votes, whoever gets the most votes in that particular board will get those 2 electoral votes. So that's why you'll see sometimes split numbers for the states. It's an interesting academic conversation. I think it would be an unbelievably more high-pitched one if Donald Trump had a 3 million popular vote lead but lost the Electoral College. You imagine the conversations we'd be having today here. but we'll never know. All right, coming up next. It was a violent day in Europe. A truck plowing into the crowd of a holiday market in Germany, killing at least 9, and an assassin in Turkey murdering the Russian ambassador in what Russians are calling a terror attack. We've got the latest on both.